Welcome to Haunted Homebodies, where Halloween isn't just a day, it's a lifestyle. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Sarah, and we're your guides through the delightfully dark corners of comfort horror.
Grab your PJs and your popcorn.
It's time for some midnight margaritas.
I do want to talk about how I came to visit you.
It was magical.
It was so fun. Well, most of it was fun. Seeing you was fun. I took a course while I was visiting you, and that was more intense than expected, so we didn't get as much quality time as I would have liked, but it was still really lovely.
You did have to work very hard while you were here.
Yeah, what is that about? I used to think I wanted to go back to school to just learn and do other things, and experiences like that remind me that I really, really don't.
Yeah, I have learned that lesson from watching other people, you included. No, thank you. I am done.
I told you, because sometimes I need like an accountability buddy, and I was like, remind me the next time I'm like, I'm gonna go back and get my PhD for no reason. Remind me.
We'll have no problem doing that.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
You are so prepped and ready for the do not get a PhD conversation.
Yeah, yes. Don't do it, man. Don't do it.
I'm not gonna do it. I want to do more stuff like this podcast, like things that are creative and fun, and I'm not being tested.
We can learn all the things we want to learn.
Right?
We do all the research we want, all the writing we want.
Yes. And
no school.
We do get some feedback, but it's not that much.
Mostly from Evan.
Right. That's so true.
It's my husband.
That's so true. We do get quality feedback from Evan.
He's very invested.
Yeah, which I think is really helpful, because on the one hand, I'm like, Evan, stop. I'm not really like that. I'm just like, I don't always want constructive feedback, especially as a beginner. But I do feel like what he says is very useful and very kind.
It's always very nice. Yes.
It's very nice. And then sometimes my husband, Chris, I'll ask him for feedback, and he'll be like, it was good. And then I'm like, I'm gonna need more.
What do you do with that?
You know what I mean? So I want it both ways. Like I want Evan to say it was good, period, because then we'll know it was so good.
Yeah, it's something to strive for.
You know what I mean? When he has no feedback, then I'm like, okay, that was a really good episode.
Yeah.
And then Chris, if he does have feedback, then maybe it was a disaster, or maybe it'd be really, really good. Or maybe if Chris has something to say, then that means it was so exceptional.
Oh, yes.
So that we just need them to flip.
We were so engaging. Yeah, I'm with you on this. I love this.
That's what's gonna happen.
I love that we brought our Halloween colors to our audio podcast, by the way. Looks great.
Yeah, it was kind of on purpose. I tried to be festive. So, by the way, speaking of which, so I came to visit you in Texas. I flew from Massachusetts, where I was visiting my family, to Texas. Long journey. We were so excited, so amped to record an in-person episode finally.
Well, we had plans for like 2 or 3 episodes.
Yes, I remember you driving me home from the airport, and I was like, I don't know, definitely 2, maybe 3.
Yeah.
How many did we record?
0 minutes of any recording.
Not a single second. We didn't even try to get out the equipment.
Oh.
But what we did do, something.
Very important
something, which was a pretty much entire rebrand of the podcast. And I wouldn't call it a totally new concept, but like a pivot for sure.
Pivot. Yeah. Remix, maybe.
A remix. I like it. A creepy remix.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we are now turning the podcast toward more Halloween, fall, creepy kind of TV shows that we're trying to embody that feeling of fall all year round. The not too scary, sometimes scary, more like fun horror. How am I doing? Am I getting it?
This is great. Cozy horror. We want those things that at least we watch and we're not terrified of.
Yeah.
The things you watch that are comforting, and then you kind of go, huh, Why do I find this so comforting?
Yeah.
This is a little messed up, but not
Yeah.
too messed up.
And for me, some of it's messed up for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a long period where I was very into horror and I was just like a horror fan, period. I didn't like the really, really hardcore stuff. Like I could do hardcore gore and I still do enjoy that from time to time, to be honest. But what I never liked and still don't like, and we will absolutely never cover, is the like bleak, depressing, super dark, super disturbing. Like,
Mhm.
no, we're not here for that. We're here for a good time.
Yeah, it could be fun, it could be
Yeah.
campy, it could be truly creepy and a little
Yes.
frightening.
Yes, it could be. It could be
Mhm.
because that's fun, I think.
Yeah.
And cozy.
Yeah, that's
So
that's
cozy.
that's the vibe. That's what we're pulling over from the other podcast, that cozy vibe. But now it's just this niche where this is something you've always been into. This is something I've never identified as being into until we started making our list of what we
Yeah.
were going to talk about.
Yeah.
And I just, these are movies I've seen. These are movies I've watched more than once. These are movies I wish that I had in my regular rotation. Like, this clicked with me in a way I wasn't totally prepared for, which I should have been because, and I know I told you this when we were in person, but in fourth grade, we had a standardized test that we had to take, and there was a writing portion of it. And we had to write about our favorite season, and I wrote about fall, and I got a perfect score. If anyone would like to know why I have some of the issues that I have today, look no further. But I got a perfect score rating about how much I love fall. My birthday is in fall. I love the fall vibe, and Halloween, horror movies, kind of mystical, magical. Like, we're gonna start on not a horror movie at all.
Right.
I think it's much more the overarching vibe of what we're looking at. Um, and so it just helped me understand this is my vibe. This is my vibe, and I'm really owning it now.
Yeah. It's so funny that you say that because I have watched horror throughout my whole life, like most of us have. Like we
Yeah.
all have movies here and there that end up into the rotation. Like most of us. I have a few friends who are like, I cannot. Like, and they'll be like, "This is way too scary," and I'm like, "It's rated PG." Well, well, whatever. But I had a similar experience when I started getting more into horror. I was talking to a patient at a former physical therapy job, and he was asking me like what I like to do for fun, and I was trying to think of a hobby that I have. And so we were talking about movies and he's like, okay, so like what movies do you like? And he was the kind of person that did not settle for just like, I like funny ones or
Mm.
scary ones. He was like, I want specific titles. It's like,
Okay.
okay. All right. So I started listing them and he was like, oh, so you like horror? And I was like, no. No, I don't think so. I don't do gory stuff. Like, I think I like thrillers. And he's like, you listed every movie you listed is a horror movie, you like horror. And I was like, oh, I like horror. So I think for the longest time, I had identified horror as something specific that it's not.
Mm,
Like
mm-hmm.
there is PG horror. Like there's horror for middle
Yeah.
schoolers, there's horror for children, there's horror for adults, there's horror
Mm-hmm.
for weirdos like me, who like I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that. But
You
weirdos.
you came to a realization just a few years before I did that
Yes.
yeah, this is what we like.
Yeah, and now I think it has evolved because after we had the former podcast Don't Look Under the Med that was really fun, very dark, very real.
Mm-hmm.
And now we've gone into a more pop culture direction after I became a mom and suddenly was like, I don't think I can watch anything but golf. I think I've discussed this in my
Yes.
postpartum anxiety days. I was like, nothing is safe. Only golf. Must be boring. Must be predictable. No harm can come to anyone on the screen. So I even tried watching an episode of The Voice and I was like, it's like a fun singing, sometimes it's sad, they don't turn the chairs. And then they're doing all these heart-wrenching stories. And I was like,
Oh
that's it.
yeah.
Only golf, back to golf. Anyway, I moved on from that stage. And while I am now more embracing the like Halloween horror loving aspects of my personality, I still do feel a shift into this more cozy, fun, let's not be too freaked out, let's not go too dark all the time, or like let's just mix it up, right? Let's go dark sometimes and scary, dark meaning scary, but then also do like the fun things that are just reminding us of like Halloween as a kid or a movie that we watched with our parents or a movie that we watched, at a sleepover or together in the movie theater when that used to be like literally the only thing we did.
It's true, and we're really leaning into that vibe, like the slumber party vibe, which really encompasses, I think, what you were just saying, which is mostly the cozy stuff, but also we used to like to test ourselves a little bit with some of
For
those
sure.
scary movies. Quite a few of the movies we'll talk about on this podcast. I have some slumber party memories of being pretty freaked out as a child watching them.
I'm excited to unpack that because we have different memories of different things. Like some
Mhm.
events we both remember, some things like only you remember or only I remember because it's memory is so tied to emotion. So if you were scared
Yeah.
of something, then you're going to be really remembering that vividly. And I'm curious to see like when you tell me the movies that scared you, if I'm like, really? Or if I'm like, oh yeah, like that one like messed me up good.
I'm looking forward to that as well. I think that'll
Yeah.
be an interesting topic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I went through an interesting trajectory, and I think it's something we've also talked about with you needing to keep me in check in the podcast because I was a normal person once in terms of watching horror movies, could not look at the screen, fingers over the eyes, blanket pulled over the head, just like really scared. And then you watch a certain amount of horror and you become desensitized in terms of your reaction. But
Mm.
something I learned that I think is super interesting. I watched a documentary about horror because horror fans do like to be self-aware and we're normal. Well, no, we're not normal. I've said that several times. Like we're interesting, nice people. Like horror
Hmm.
fans tend to be super kind and gentle,
Yeah.
which a lot of people don't recognize. But we're also curious as to like why do we enjoy this? We're self-aware that it's a little bit odd to
Mhm.
be this nice, gentle person and then be like, I want to watch someone get chased down and stabbed. Super fun. And in this documentary, they were measuring the host. I don't remember who the host was of this particular documentary, but and his mom. And they were watching a horror movie and they had monitors on them. So they had heart rate monitors. I don't know exactly what else. Maybe they were looking at like pupil dilation. Basically, they were looking at like fight or flight response, which horror
Oh.
movies scare you and they trigger the fight or flight response
Yeah.
and they increase that nervous system activity because your
Okay.
brain is to a degree like experiencing this as if it's real. That's how movies work if you're really paying attention and engaged. And what I thought was really funny was the mom. They showed the video of them watching, and the mom is freaking out. She's disgusted. She's scared. She's having all of these bodily reactions. And her son, the host of the documentary, is just sitting there, like, kind of like laughing and chilling. But what was super interesting is after they were analyzing the data, and the bodily reaction was the same. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
Wow.
I can sit there kind of cool as a cucumber and really take in the movie and stare at the scariness, but I'll still be having those like fluctuations if I'm really engaged in watching it. Isn't that interesting?
That is fascinating. So essentially, and then like the serotonin boost that you get at the end after being
Yes,
scared, like just because you look cool, calm, and collected during it, you're still gonna get that boost after it.
for sure. For sure.
Cool.
It's something super interesting to me too to think about with like horror and trauma and like, is it good or not good to watch a really scary movie, to be scared? Because on the
Hmm.
one hand, there's the vein of thought that watching it and experiencing this builds resilience. And the more that you're able to get through that can be really helpful, especially for people who have lived through trauma.
Hmm.
The scary movie provides a way to get through a scary experience in a controlled, safe environment. So there
Okay.
is no actual threat to your safety. So you
Yeah.
get to the end and then you're like, it's okay. And then, like you said, you get this like flood of happier hormones, and you're like, I got through it. And we
Yeah.
all know that when you like come out of a scary movie and you're like giggly and high on
Yeah.
life. You're like, that was so good. Whereas during the entire movie, you're like, why didn't we go see a rom-com? God damn it. Why did we do
Right.
this again?
Because I'm the person watching through my fingers. Like I
Totally.
just can't sometimes.
Yeah. No, I'm a little rusty, so I could be back there, but we'll see. We'll see if it's like riding a bike or
Yeah.
not when I watch something that I actually haven't seen a bunch before. But yeah, it's super interesting. But just to close the loop on my really long science sidebar here. The other thought about like watching scary movies, right, is that it is activating this fight or flight response. And do we want that? Do we want
Hmm.
to like kind of stimulate an already overstimulated nervous system?
Okay.
I don't know. I went through a period where it felt really natural to me. And I think that's why horror became such a big part of my life, is because I was already in this like sustained, stressed out fight or flight. And
Yeah.
horror was kind of meeting me where I was at. Whereas
Okay.
watching something where I was supposed to be relaxed and giggly or, you know, going along
Hmm.
for the romance, it was like, I can't vibe with that.
Yeah. Well, it helped in some way, right?
I'm here.
Yeah. You're here, you're talking about it, and
Yeah,
you're actually have gone through a whole cycle where you did not enjoy that experience, and now you're easing back into it in the
that's very
coziest
true.
way.
That's very true. With acute anxiety, can confirm, does not feel good. No. Comfort horror, maybe.
Yeah.
You know, ones
Well,
you're really familiar with.
we'll try it out.
New
Uh,
horror, absolutely not. Hard
yeah.
pass.
I mean, we've got some good campy stuff, I'm sure, that will come up in the future. And that's another, we're talking a lot about cozy horror. I think
Yeah,
campy is a big
yeah.
part of it too.
Yes,
Episode
always,
2 is going to
always
be
campy.
great for that.
Yeah, yeah, the campier, the better, pretty much, for
Yeah.
us. Pretty
You know,
much.
that's basically my barometer for whether or not I'll enjoy something. If something is
Same.
not like A plus plus great,
Yeah,
then I need it to be campy bad.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
I love a horror comedy. I think that
Yes.
those are some of my favorite movies, and just good, we need to laugh more. But
We do. I think we're gonna do a lot of that
yeah,
in this
we'll be
pod.
having a good time.
Would you like to tell our listeners the other part of the podcast? We're talking a lot about the types of movies we're going to discuss, but we have a
Yeah,
whole other aspect here.
that's so true. So in addition to like whatever horror, comfort horror movie we discussed, the later segment of the podcast, kind of the final portion of the podcast, will be a related story. And I'm still not exactly sure what type of story I want that to be. Some of it's going to be my original work for my little brain. My little writerly brain is going to come up with some scary stories. I'm going to share them, which will be really scary in a different way, but fun. So, we are talking about practical magic today.
I'm so excited that this is how we're kicking off the new pod because it's the vibe. It's the whole vibe that we're going for here.
It is definitely a journey. I have only seen this movie now 3 times. Actually 4, because I watched it again last night. I watched it
Oh, I love that.
twice this week, which doubled the amount of times I had seen it. I just it's not in like my comfort watch. You're right, is totally the vibe. But I think I slept on it for a while because I did not know how to categorize it. Like, I didn't know what kind of movie it was, and, like, I don't think it knows what kind of movie it is.
So you are so astute. This is what the critics had a big problem with when the movie first came
Mm,
out, was that it's like part cop procedural, it's part domestic violence drama, it's part mystical fantasy, and it's part rom-com,
yeah.
all rolled into one.
Yeah, exactly. I was not ready for that the first time I saw it.
I love that about it. I feel like it does it seamlessly, and I recognize that opinion is not shared by everyone.
No, but I think it's fun. You just kinda have to roll with it, and I think if you have set expectations going into it, you could be disappointed, but I was pretty open-minded the first time I saw it and was like, "What is going on?" But I enjoyed it. It was a fun time.
Yeah. And something that we talked about briefly outside of the pod, it's very emotional.
Yeah.
You know, it's billed as kind of this fun, like the theme music, it's kind of fun and mystical and that's it. And it's pretty dark in some real ways.
For sure. It handles some really heavy issues, and there also are some pretty severe cuts from, like, giggly, plinky ploppy, happy music to, like, exorcism.
So
You know?
I'm going to link an article in the show notes for this that gives a great context and history for so much of the movie. The article came out last year, I think. And one of the things that it talks about is that they did that intentionally. They like really wanted those scenes to feel really jarring, where you're going from this like really happy thing, midnight margaritas being the prime example, to like all of a sudden having to deal with this darkness that's happening. So that was on
Interesting.
purpose.
Wow, I love how I'm just setting you up for all of
You
your
are. You
right
are.
now.
I'm
This was
gonna
not
I'm
planned.
gonna back us up for a second and just give
Yeah.
a little
Let's
background info.
yeah, let's talk about the actual
Yeah.
movie we're talking about
Yeah.
first.
My favorite fact about this movie is that it was released on my birthday in 1998. Google classifies this movie as a fantasy comedy, but as we discussed, that does not encompass all of its many genres. And it did not come out to great reception. It's got a 26% on Rotten Tomatoes,
Tough.
6.3 out of 10 on IMDb, but 74% of Google users liked it. So it is definitely was a cult classic for a while, and at this point I think is just a favorite nostalgic film that people watch every fall. I think this is a repeat for so many people, myself included. I watch it in the fall every year, and it was kind of a treat to watch it this spring. It was a little bit different. And I have a very good friend who I cannot talk about practical magic without giving him a shout out, especially because this episode is going to come out on his birthday, and practical magic is just one of his all-time favorites. So hi, Alexand.
Oh, I love it. I love
Alexand
it.
loves practical magic, and one of my favorite moments was at his wedding. He and his husband walked down the aisle after getting married to the song This Kiss by Faith Hill
Oh my
from the
gosh.
movie. And it was such an amazing moment.
Oh, I
And
actually I
yeah,
got chills. I love
imagine
it.
being there.
I can't. I love it. I love it. That's so cute.
Yeah, it was amazing. So I love that. I love that this movie came out on my birthday, and we're gonna release this episode on his birthday. It feels a little witchy, like a little magic happening there.
Mhm.
If anyone else would like to join us in this and watch it, it is currently streaming on Pluto TV and Paramount Plus.
So get us started here on the plot. What happens in
Yeah,
this
so
movie?
just a short little recap. So this movie is all about the Owens family, who they live in this cute New England seaside town, an island actually, I believe, and they're kind of feared by the whole village. And that is because of their ancestor from like 300 years ago, Maria, who was a witch. And Maria cast a spell all those many centuries ago to never fall in love again after she was abandoned by her lover, who it's insinuated, if not outright said, was somebody else's husband. She was tried as a witch, supposed to be hanged. She saved herself, but this spell she cast evolved into a curse that kills any man who loves an Owens woman from this family. So, cut to present, cut to almost present. And we see that our main characters, they're just little girls still at this point. Sally and Jillian have been orphaned because their father died because of the curse, and then their mother died of a broken heart. So they go, I know, it's really like it's
Sad.
sad from the beginning. So then they go to live with their aunts, Frances and Jet,
Oh my gosh.
two of my all-time
Perfect.
favorite movie characters ever, played by Tucker Channing, who I am just obsessed with, and
She's the
Diane
perfect witch.
Wiest. Oh,
Yeah,
my
they're both the
Tucker
perfect
Channing,
witches.
yes.
Yeah,
Oh, they're fantastic.
so good.
I have some discussion points later. They're just amazing. So they're
Mhm.
raised by their aunts. They learn magic from their aunts. They just grow up in a magical place. They grow up getting to eat brownies for breakfast and never having to brush their teeth, which sounds gross, but maybe
So
magic does
gross.
something with it. Maybe they got magic for
Oh,
that.
is this actually a horror story?
Yeah,
Teeth
it's a
falling out
dental
and
horror story.
that's the worst
Yes,
kind, I think.
yes. But they're not really liked by the neighborhood kids because, prejudices against witches.
Sure.
That's what's going on in this little seaside town. So crucial to the story is that they watch their aunts cast this love spell for this scorned woman in town. And Sally, played by Sandra Bullock, casts her own spell where she describes this man she thinks is impossible to ever exist in real life and says that that's who she'll fall in love with, just as a way of avoiding ever falling in love. Very dramatic. Love those vibes. Love those
Mhm.
vibes. Jillian, played by Nicole Kidman as an adult, says instead, I can't wait to fall in love. And she follows through on this. As a teenager, she runs away with some random boyfriend of hers. But before she leaves, she makes a blood pact with Sally that they're always going to be there for one another.
Mhm.
And Sally stays behind. She's kind of miserable. And then she, in literally a moment, falls in love with this man. There is this epic scene. So they pass each other on the street, they glance in each other's direction. Sally goes home. The aunts are obviously meddling in some way. And then all of a sudden, Sally is running down into town and leaping into his arms and kissing him to the soundtrack of Faith Hill's This Kiss. It's iconic. I love it. They fall in love. She marries him. They have 2 daughters, but the curse gets him.
You are flying through this plot. I'm like, hang on. I gotta talk about how cute this man is. Who is that actor?
I don't know. I looked him up because he
I
looks like someone I've seen in everything, but I
Right, but also
can't.
nothing. And I'm like, I
Yeah.
think I fell in love with him too, but
It's adorable. The little
he's really
scene where they're
cute.
all dancing together.
Yeah,
It's
so
so
cute.
cute.
So cute. But this is
Yeah.
all happening very early in the movie, for
Yeah,
sure.
this is like the first 10 minutes of the movie. This is
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
all just backstory
We're
still.
coming in, yeah, we're coming in
Yeah.
hot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so to be
Okay, so
clear, the curse gets him. He
yeah, he
dies. He
dies.
dies. It's
Ugh,
like I think that maybe that scene where she's trying to get the beetle who
yeah,
was squeaking because it means he's gonna clicking because it means that her
yeah.
husband's gonna die. I think that's the most upsetting scene in the whole movie. That one,
So sad.
yeah, that one's really hard. That one's really, really heartbreaking.
And she destroys their home
She
trying to get this
does.
beetle. It's so heartbreaking.
Yeah. Yeah. And then yeah, he's gone. And then all of a sudden they cut to Sally moving back in with her aunts and she's bringing her daughters, but she wants it to be very different. She is bitter because of the curse and she doesn't want her daughters to learn any magic. She wants her aunts to behave themselves, which they do not know how to do.
Yeah.
Let's be clear. It's not in
Yeah.
their nature.
But fair enough.
Yeah,
She's great
I
there.
get it. I get where she's coming from. She doesn't want them to go through what she's going through and what her mom went through. It's very sad. Um, Jillian has been out and about living her life since then. I think implied that she has been partying heavily for some years, just having some fun. And then we see she's in this pretty creepy, really dangerous feeling a relationship with this man named Jimmy Angelov.
Jimmy.
He's Bulgarian,
I did not
apparently.
know he was Bulgarian.
She says it in the movie. Sally's
Okay.
like, what kind of Angelov? What kind of name is that? And Jillian goes, it's Bulgarian.
I do not remember that line.
Yeah. Yeah, he's Bulgarian. What a villain.
Yeah.
So Jillian calls, and she needs out of there. It's gotten violent, and Sally goes to help, and this Jimmy character ends up kidnapping them in what is definitely the tensest scene in the movie. Him in the car with the two of them, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So they've got to do something about it, and they decide they're going to trick him. He's got a bottle of tequila, and they trick him by slipping belladonna into it, which is how Jillian usually gets him to fall asleep and stop bothering her. But Sally puts a little too much belladonna in there and kills him. It's an accident. But yep, she kills him. They're freaking out because Sally doesn't want to go to jail for murder. So they decide the solution is to bring him back to the aunt's house and resurrect him with magic.
This happens a lot in movies.
Yeah.
Like, why? He kidnapped you. He's abusive. You defend yourselves in order to survive. And everyone's first thought is, I'm going to go to jail for murder. It's like, it's not murder.
Right? I really feel like they had a solid self-defense case here, or
Yeah.
that no one knew he was with them.
Sure.
There's a
Wait,
lot
are you
of...
saying you want to cover it up?
Yeah, I think they
Yeah.
could have covered it up, is what
Better.
I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. Would have been a much more boring movie,
Sure.
but
Wouldn't have
I
been a
think they could have
movie.
done it. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. So, predictably, this does not go very well.
Sure.
He comes back, let's say wrong. So they kill him again. The old-fashioned way, don't they? Like hit him over the head with a shovel? They kill him again. Yeah. And they just bury him in the garden at the aunt's house, and then they're like, "Okay, we're good. Everything's fine." Like they're not really that worried about it.
Yeah. They're chilling for sure. They're like, all right, we got it. We got this handle.
Yeah.
That whole sequence is so bizarre to me. And I think it is supposed to be, it's kind of creepy when, his eyes open and like that during that whole resurrection scene. But then when he comes back to life, he starts shouting and like, I just find it so funny. I don't know. He's like yelling like, I want you to be my wife. It just sounds like Borat or something. I don't
know.
It's so weird. I'm like, what? I don't know. The whole thing is so misguided, but
it is.
It's a movie. So we're having to make some mistakes here so that we can clean up the mess later, right?
Otherwise we wouldn't have the plot line, and we would not have the main romantic line of the film. So I guess it's fine.
Mistakes are made. It's okay.
Yeah. So everything's fine. They're all chilling at the house, and then we get to what is probably the most iconic, I keep saying iconic because that's how I feel about this movie, but the most iconic scene in the film, where it seems like the aunts are making a potion, but they're just making margaritas. And it turns out that they have a midnight margaritas tradition, and Jillian and Sally come downstairs and they're incredibly cozy house. Oh my god, what I would not do to have that house. And they are drinking and they are dancing, and the soundtrack is fun, and they are having just this grand old time, and like you can tell they had a good time filming it. It is a fun scene until all of a sudden it starts turning not fun, and they start kind of insulting each other out of nowhere, like kind of funny at first and then kind of not funny. And then Sally realizes that the tequila that's in the margaritas was the same brand of tequila that Jimmy was drinking in the car when he kidnapped them. And she freaks out and she says, "What? Where did you get this?" And the aunts are singing, and they continue to sing. Someone left it on the porch.
And they were singing it to the tune of a song that Jimmy had been singing in the car.
You're always on my mind.
Which, like, who knows why he was singing that? But yeah, I guess he's just because he's like a creepy stalkery, obsessive.
I think it fit
all of the above,
well, actually. Yeah. So yeah, it turns dark pretty quickly. The aunts realize that something is wrong, but Sally and Jillian won't tell them what's going on because they killed somebody and they don't want to admit that. And so
Fair.
the aunts leave. They leave town. They pack up and leave town. They tell the sisters, you got to clean up your own mess. We haven't talked a lot about the little girls. The little girls are still living at the house with everybody and the dead body in the garden and everything. And they give them these protection ropes with a spell so that they'll be safe. The aunts aren't taking any chances. I keep going between aunts and ants. Where am I even from?
A lot of places at this point.
I'm a product of many different regions.
Mhm.
So they do that. Shortly after they leave, we meet Detective Gary Hallett. Dreamboat.
Yeah, I
90s
have a crush on him
Dreamboat.
too.
Yeah, how can you not? What
Very cute.
do you
Very
mean by
cute.
two? Who else have we discussed today that you have a crush on?
Sally's first or her
Oh,
husband,
yes,
father
her
of her
husband.
children. I don't know his
She's done
name.
really well. I think his name is Michael. I wrote it down as that, and then I was like, "Is that right?" And I didn't.
Michael
Say it
seems
again.
right for like how callously we introduce him, fall in love with him, and then kill him off within
It's
the
rough.
first act.
Yes.
Yeah.
But Sally does really well. So,
But by doing
spoiler
nothing at
alert.
all.
I
Yeah,
know.
yeah, yeah.
Well, by being Sandra Bullock in the
Well, yeah.
90s.
Yeah. I mean,
Yes.
gorgeous,
Yeah.
but still, she's not
Yeah.
exactly like on a dating app. She's just
Just
hanging
walking
out,
around
walking down
town.
the street and then murdering people.
Yeah.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. All right. So Detective Gary, he comes into town from Tucson, Arizona. He's looking for Jimmy because some women have turned up dead that are connected to him. And he wants to know where he is, and then it becomes pretty clear that the sisters are hiding something. There is this just like adorable few scenes where he is trying to learn about the Owen sisters, walking around town, and everyone's telling him like the witchy things, and he's obviously loving the town, and he is flirting up a storm with
Mhm.
Sally. They
He's
are, yeah.
also like having these angsty moments where he's like, you have to tell me if you did something, if like you know something about this man who murdered women, like killed multiple former girlfriends. Like there's some anger there that I'm like, why are you so mad? Like I feel like he would just be like holding their hands, being like, just let's work through this together. Just tell
Yeah,
me.
they're
Like he's a
obviously also
terrible
victims.
person. Yeah.
Yeah, but we still swoon. We still love
Oh
him.
yeah. Yeah, no,
Yeah,
mostly it's good. Mostly it's
yeah,
good, but not perfect. There are a few
yeah,
times where I'm like, chill out.
yeah. Well, and then Sally's kind of playing with him the whole time because the spell that she cast for a perfect man, she can't lie to the perfect man. So she can't lie to this detective. So she is like talking herself in circles to make sure she doesn't tell him an outright lie, and it gets a little silly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's my input.
Yeah,
Thank you for listening to my podcast.
I love it. I love
Silly
it.
indeed.
Okay, so Jillian is putting together a spell to get this Gary out of town, but then Sally's daughters realize that Gary matches the description of the perfect impossible man that Sally put a spell out there in the world about. He's got one green eye and one blue eye, which I don't think is true, but they try to say it's true in the movie. His favorite shape is a star because he's got a sheriff's badge. He knows how to ride a horse backwards.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. Oh, and he knows how to flip pancakes. That's how the girls realize it. He makes them
Okay, okay.
pancakes.
I couldn't
Yeah.
remember her full list, and so
Yeah.
when it clicked for the daughters, I was like, what are they realizing here?
The pancakes was the moment because this man who is investigating this family stayed to make them pancakes.
Yes.
Just,
I love how messy that is.
it's so messy.
Because then they get in a fight, don't they? Like right after that, like he has this lovely breakfast with them, and then he's
Yes.
like storms. Oh, because the because the frog like throws up a ring
Throws up
randomly.
Jimmy's ring.
Right, right.
Yes. It's a great
Sure,
movie. It's a
like
good
as
movie.
frogs do.
Yeah. Threw up a ring. Then he was like, there's only one explanation, which is that you're lying to me. Anyway.
Right, right.
Anyway, they get in a fight, and then Sally's like, I can't do this anymore. And she goes and like she basically confesses everything to him. Not like straight up, but pretty close to confesses everything to him. They're obviously super into each other. They kiss. And then she's like, no, I can't do this. She's afraid of the curse. She doesn't want somebody else to die. Also, he's investigating her for murder. I don't know. There's like a lot happening.
Yeah, it's messy. Like I said, it's very messy.
So then we get to like Act 3, the really dramatic stuff. And they think they've killed Jimmy again, but then he's back and his spirit is possessing Jillian. And it does get pretty creepy. Like this is definitely the more horror movie part of this, if there's any part of it that I would classify as that.
Mm-hmm.
Sally runs back to save Jillian because they're connected, because they're blood packed and all that. But one of Sally's impossible man aspects in the curse was that he could hear her yell from a mile away or something like that. So Gary also knows something's wrong, and he runs to the house and he sees the possession, which, you know, he hasn't grown up around magic. This is wild to him. But he repels Jimmy's spirit, which has exited Jillian's body at this point and is existing on its own.
Sure.
Repels it with his silver badge, which, like his sheriff's badge, which is a callback to when Sally was explaining magic to him. She's like, it's not all spells and potions. And she's like, very seductively, like reaches over and grabs his badge. And it's like, you know, like this is a talisman. It doesn't just have power on its own. It has power because you believe in it. And then it literally banishes an evil spirit. So, you know, they think Jimmy's dead again because they have not learned their lesson, apparently. So he's back. He comes back. He's like still, I guess, still kind of there. He's possessing Jillian. It gets like really dark. He's real creepy. And then probably my favorite part of the movie happens, which is where the ants come back and they're like, oh, we did not come back early enough. This isn't good. And they're like, we need a coven. And so Sally gets to activate the phone tree for her kid's school that she has been put at the top of because Jillian did a little magic, because she's usually not very popular. And all the women in the town who like kind of talk trash about them all the time and are not nice about them actually show up. Some of them because they are friends or, you know, like a little bit into the witchy stuff, but some of them just because they're really curious. And there's no like question. I just love this part because they're just like, yeah, I'll be there. And everybody brings their own broom, except that especially adorable woman who brings her dust buster.
It's not even a full-size vacuum.
I know.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I love it. So they form a circle. They banish Jimmy. It's just this like, really powerful moment of these women coming together. It gets really scary and it looks like it's not gonna work, but it does. My maybe favorite line from the whole movie, when they banish him, he turns to a bunch of dust, and then like they look around, and then Margot Martindale is in this movie, which is not talked about enough. Margot Martindale is phenomenal and one of my favorite actresses, and she just has a very small part in this movie, but she looks around with this look on her face, looks around to everybody with their brooms, and then looks at the dust that used to be Jimmy and goes, let's clean house.
I love that you love that so much.
I just love Margot Martindale. Truly,
What else is she
in?
I don't even.
Oh my gosh!
I'm trying to even think of who that is.
She was in The Americans. She is in the show BoJack Horseman, where she plays herself, and they always only refer to her as the esteemed character actress Margot Martindale every time. She's not like a lead. She's a character actress, and I will think of other things she's been in, but she's always like the highlight of whatever it is. Oh my god. Cocaine Bear. Did you see Cocaine Bear?
Yes.
She's in Cocaine Bear.
Yes, she is. She's the park ranger, right?
Yes.
Yeah, or one of them.
Yeah,
Yeah, she's so funny.
she is, and that movie is a real hoot. Maybe we need to add that to the list. I don't know. It's funny
I-
horror.
that's we've got to the point in the recording where I just go, I don't know. I don't know about that.
It's fair.
We'll
It's
see.
fair.
We'll see.
Anyway, Margot Martindale, true delight. Great, great, ridiculous line in the movie. But Jillian is saved, and then all of a sudden everybody loves the Owens family because they've all come together and now they understand there's a line that's like, oh, I guess there's a little witch in all of us, and it's just really sweet. I love that.
I
But
love that.
Gary still goes away
Oh yeah.
because Sally tells him that there was a spell that she cast, and she's like, so we'll never know if it's real. Neither of us will ever know if it's real because I cast this spell once upon a time. So
Oh,
who
the line
knows?
where he's like, I wished for you too. I'm not a big romance gal, but that one got me. I was like, damn.
It's a good one.
Damn, Gary, yes, I will marry you.
Oh my
Thank you so
gosh.
much for asking.
Yes. Good call out. That is, oh, such a good one.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it really makes
Mm-hmm.
me feel something as a not
Yeah.
romance fan
Yeah. He
myself.
dreamboat.
But yeah, then he leaves.
But then he leaves. But then he leaves.
Yeah.
Still. Just really tugging at our heartstrings. And then not a lot else happens. And then Sally gets an envelope in the mail, and Gary has faked evidence of Jimmy's death using the ring that the frog threw up to prove that it was him and cleared their names. So that's really nice.
Again, like choices were made that I don't think had to have been made. Like he went from angsty, like, confess that you're murderers to like, yeah, I'll sweep this under the rug with still having no idea really
Yeah.
exactly what went on or how culpable you were. Like, no one at any point
100%.
was like, let's just do a quick run through of the very clear self-defense situation that happened here to this criminal, and then we'll move on. Anywho, yes, he did wrap that up nicely for them.
Okay.
Yeah, he left, he swept everything under the rug,
Yeah.
and became a criminal himself, so we're all criminals now. We're all on a
Yeah.
level playing field.
Yeah. And then he just shows up one day, back at the house, and him and Sally are in love, and then cut to the last scene of the film where it's Halloween night. The whole town is on the lawn of the Owens family house, which is just cute, and they're all there to watch all of the Owens women fly off of the roof, which is adorable, while Sandra Bullock does a great voiceover and ends with this line: always throw spilled salt over your left shoulder, keep rosemary by your garden gate, plant lavender for luck, and fall in love whenever you can.
All right, justice for Michael. That's how I feel about this ending. Like, we all just moved on. His, like, old enough to know what's going on children are just like, you're my new dad. I like
Yeah,
Gary, but like,
yeah.
come on.
It's
We
fair.
loved that man, okay?
I know. There's
I love that the overarching theme that comes out with like the phone tree and then the whole town accepting them. I love the message of, if you just kind of be who you are and are honest about it, then people are like, okay. Like, I don't think that is true, but I love that idea, right? Because it was like they were hiding that they were witches and they were kind of
yeah.
not owning it to a certain degree, or at least in part acting like ashamed of it, or not accepting of themselves. And then once they just came out with it and were like, this is us, take it or leave it, and everyone was just like, I'm a witch too now.
Yeah.
I
And
love
there's
it.
also in that, I mean, it's all women. We have no idea how the men of the town feel about them. They don't exist. Like
That's so
other
true.
men who are not love interests of Sally or Jillian do not exist in this movie.
There's like that one man who comes into the shop. And
Yeah.
yeah, that's the only guy I remember. I do remember also the really creepy woman that you're talking about at the beginning when they're watching like talk about like darkness in this movie. It's like stab a pigeon to death off screen.
Oh
But,
yeah.
they're murdering
Mhm.
a pigeon or a dove or something.
Mhm.
And that woman's vibe freaks me out
Yeah.
hard. The actress really nails it. She's so creepy
Mhm.
and is holding the picture of like the most average man I have ever
I
seen.
kind of wonder if that was on purpose too,
Yeah, it's
like
like Joe anybody.
yeah.
And she is like, kill the damn bird. Do it.
He needs to love me.
Like more than he can ever bear. And I'm
Yeah.
like, really? Like,
Yeah.
you're gonna, you could maybe have this spell out for anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I did want to kind of know her story a little bit more, as she scared me.
she was terrifying. So I have some questions for you about
Oh yeah,
this
hit me.
movie, if you're open to it.
Oh yeah.
So very important. What's cozier? The town they live in or the house they live in?
Oh my gosh. Don't make me choose.
It's like it's almost too perfect.
They are so on an equal playing field. It is the perfect house in the perfect town.
Yes.
I'm gonna say the house just because it was created for this film, right? It's got this mystical couldn't work in real
Yeah.
life-ness
The
to it.
stairs just keep going in that
Yes.
house.
Yes, there's so many levels. I love the decor. I love the yard. It's like overlooking the ocean. It is perfection. It's got the gardens. It
Yes.
literally has everything. And the town, I would say, is pretty perfect, but I've also seen similar towns in other
Yeah.
movies and shows where I've never seen a house that's like that incredible. So I'm gonna have to go with the house, but both are so great and add so much to this movie and make it so cozy. And this is part of the like identity crisis that this movie has. It's
Yeah.
like murder mystery, but in this charming coastal town.
Okay, well, 90% of the media we'll be talking about on this podcast has that dissonance.
It's true. And it's not even a murder mystery. Like we know who did it.
Yeah, it's true. It's like a mystery to Gary for about 45 seconds.
Exactly. And Gary's more just like, why are you guys being weird and not telling me
Yeah.
for the rest of the movie?
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting really annoyed. Just tell me what happened, please.
Fun fact, set in New England. It was filmed in the Pacific Northwest.
I did read that because I think there may be a reboot happening.
There is, which I intentionally didn't bring up because there's so few reboot sequels that are great, and I will watch it and I will be open to it, but I need this one to exist on its own.
I agree. We're in a real reboot season of our lives right now. They're rebooting everything.
Like our podcast.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. She leads in like our podcast. And you're right. Some of them are great. Well, a few are great. Rarely it's great.
Yeah.
I think the reboot, if it's truly a reboot, it's like, please don't. If it's a requel, maybe. I'm using a scream.
I believe it's a requel.
Okay,
Because
maybe.
Sandy and Nicole are going to be back.
Right, it's like a continuation.
Yeah.
So I think there's a better chance that it could be fun.
Mm-hmm.
If it was just a sequel, then it's just too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think they should go there most of the time. But you never know. It could be really fun and surprise us.
I'll be open to it, but I'm not going to be excited for it. That sounds like a recipe for disappointment.
That is so pessimistic. You're like, I'm going to go to the theaters and watch it, but I'm not going to have a good time.
No. I'm open to having a good time, but I'm not going to set expectations to have a good time because then I'll be disappointed. Like I want to go in with a low bar.
Fair, but I'm like still imagining you just like sitting in the front row, like pouting, being like, "This is dumb. Like the movie hasn't even started.
I mean, listen, this will be on our list at some point. Buffy the Vampire Slayer is being rebooted, and I have exactly the same feelings there.
All right. Well, what's your next question? You have another one?
Yes. Stockard Channing's big hat, the huge big hat that she wears around town, she wears around the house, that big floppy hat. Could I pull it off?
Yes. Will you wear it next time? Oh my gosh.
Need to buy it.
Could you pull it off? Looks wise, yes. Personality wise, absolutely not. No
I can't
chance.
pull off any hats.
You would be so uncomfortable. It would be palpable.
Okay, but what if I bought it just for working in my garden? Which I realized when watching this movie. So listeners, I have a brand new vegetable garden, and I'm watching Practical Magic and watching Sally work out in the garden, and I was like, subconsciously, is this how I ended up with a vegetable garden?
Oh my gosh. I think yes. I love when that happens, when you watch a movie and you're like, that is why I made that sometimes major life choice.
I'm
Sounds
pretty
like
sure
my life is like a movie. And if I do this, then this is going to happen. You're trying to manifest the practical magic house.
And I wanna wear the big hat while I garden.
I want you to wear the big hat. That hat seems almost like you will be like sweltering in the Texas heat. Like you need something with a little less like billowing around.
Yeah.
The face.
Also, like truly, Stockard Channing is the only personality that could pull that off. It's that big or nothing.
Totally. I love their witchy aunt outfits when they're just walking around the town. They're such a vibe. It's
They're
so fun.
so good. I mean, but all the outfits, because Sally and Jillian's outfits are so 90s. They're so perfect 90s in the way that all fashion was a little witchy. It was like the dark lipsticks and like the like clingy but flowy dresses, and oh, they were good.
Oh, and this is making me talking about the two pairings there. So you think about another thing I love about this movie is that it's actually just a movie about sisters. Like there's all of this romance stuff, but it's really just about like all of these generations of sisters, which is so cute. But also like what is going on genetically where we are now having like one redhead and one brunette consistently. Like we're having these clones down the line.
Magic, Ashley.
Sure.
Magic.
It's all magic. It's not genetics. There is no evolution. It's magic.
It's magic.
Also, like, men's genes are just washed right out by the Owens women. Doesn't matter who you reproduce with, you're going to have one brunette and one redhead, and they're going to be best friends, and they're going to be magical.
Yeah. But I do love that. I love that it's about those specific actual sisters, and then it's about sisterhood in the bigger sense, as covens always are.
Right.
There was a review of this movie that said something along the lines of, and this is gonna make you sick to your stomach when you hear it, that said like, there are too many women in this movie. Could they have fit more women into this movie?
What?
So one of the things that I was reading is that a lot of the people involved with the movie think that one of the reasons it got such bad reviews is that most of the critics back then were men.
Oh.
And this is a movie for the girls. Like straight up, this is a movie about women.
This is a girls, the gays and the theys movie, yes, for sure.
Very much so.
Yeah. So this is like a F the patriarchy movie, and like and I love when movies are like 75% audience score and like 20% critic score. I know I'm gonna love it.
Yes.
It's a movie for me. The lower the critics rate it, the more I'm like, I have to see this. It's gotta be good.
So it was directed by a man, which this is a fun fact with the movie. You watch Only Murders in the Building, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
last season. You remember Professor Dudenoff?
So I am not caught up.
For our listeners who have stuck through to the most recent season of Only Murders in the Building, there is a character in the last one. The actual actor is only in a few episodes, but the character is referenced all the time. Professor Dudenoff, played by an actor named Griffin Dunn, who directed this movie.
Oh,
He's not like a big time actor. He directed the movie. I'm really impressed, actually, that there was a male director of this movie because it doesn't. You know the types. There are plenty of movies about women directed by men, and you can tell. And this one doesn't have that feel to it at all. And I was reading an article with or an interview with Griffin Dunn last year, and he's talking about the reboot, and he said this one needs to be directed by a woman. And I loved that, and I felt like that kind of explains some of the attitude. And I don't know if all the writers were women, but at least some of them were. And there's a woman who was a producer. Like it was made mostly by women, except for the director, who actually was the one who brought in the domestic violence storyline because his sister had been killed by an abusive partner.
wow.
And so he like brought that in as a way to make the evil of the story real. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. And he clearly was listening to the female perspective
Yeah.
and wasn't afraid to, in the eyes of some critics, go way overboard.
Too many women in this movie about
I also
women.
It's so funny because until you mentioned that, I did not notice the lack of men. I did not miss them. I was like, we've got two. I'm set. It's all I need.
But think about how many movies just have like a token one or two women. And they just really went the other way here. And I love a movie that is equally dispersed. But I also love this movie a lot.
I like the idea of just like a witchy coastal, almost like 80-20 split of like men and women. It'd be fun.
I'm a big fan. I watch it every year, and I will continue to do so.
I think I will be joining you there. This will become part of my rotation. It won't be in the top, but it'll be in there. I definitely think a fall watch is in order, and I might surprise myself. I could pop this one on more than I think.
All right. Well, I am off to go make some midnight margaritas. But Ashley, what are we talking about next week?
Sarah, I am so glad you asked. I am very excited for next week's episode. It's a scream, baby. All right, sweet dreams, homebodies.
And now it's time for your bedtime story.
The cart rolled by the pumpkin patch, rotted, teeming with flies and smelling of death. The scent hit her nostrils all at once, dampened only by the cool, misty rain gently kissing her cheeks. She wasn't quite sure, but she could have sworn that the man's eyes darted to look at her just as they passed the rotten vegetation before returning to the dirt path ahead. "There you go, Mum," he rumbled as they pulled up the stone-clad estate on the marsh's edge. "Shall I see ya to the door?" "I can manage just fine," she replied, as she swung her dress off the side of the carriage and lowered herself down in one smooth motion. She tried to unhasten her steps as she walked toward her front door, wanting to avoid the suspicion of the man in the cart as he lingered just a bit too long, and she felt his eyes bore into the back of her skull. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted her steps, listening to the gravel crunch under her feet. Maybe she wanted to avoid what was waiting for her at home as well. The carriage wheels creaked as they began to turn at last, and she heaved the front door open. She was once again hit with the smell. Putrid, rotting. Although this time it wasn't the pumpkins. This time it was her husband. 4 husbands, dead in not much more than so many years. And she knew this time the people of her formerly peaceful village would not let it go. She spent 5 more days next to her dear husband's decaying corpse, jockeying between wails of sorrow, fear of retribution, and also a tiny burning deep in her belly, a glimmer of a better future somewhere far in the distance. When they finally came, they dragged her into the streets by her ankles. People in the town square screamed, "Witch! Witch!" and threw hunks of pumpkin meat, soggy from the spring rain. Her cell was damp, cool. She clung to the steel bars on the window, looking onto the town with soft eyes. She would miss it when she was gone. The pyre was being set, and she was scheduled to be burned tomorrow. "You'll get what's coming to you," the prison guard said as he slid a small bowl of cold broth into her cell. She smiled, thanked him, and he retreated back down the hall, dismayed by her kind words. The next morning, the guard was notified it was time for her to be burned. The jeers of the townsfolk could be heard outside as they gathered to witness. He was pleased that soon this woman would be gone, and the crops would no longer be cursed, the men would no longer be victims, and the town would once again be freed from ill. In the dim morning light, he unlocked the cell. "Let's go, Mum." Nothing. No reply. "I said, let's be going," he boomed. Silence. He swung the heavy iron door open and clutched his chest, a pain pulsating down his left arm. The electric sensation brought him to his knees, and the last thing he saw before the light left his eyes was the empty cell. She was already gone.
Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. If you're a new listener, welcome to the Homebodies. And if you're back again for another slumber party, we're so glad to have you.
If you haven't already, please take a quick minute to leave us a review and follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And also follow us on our haunted social channels. You can find us at Haunted Homebodies Pod. Until next time, and remember, when in doubt, just stay home.